Good evening, everyone. How we doing today? I pray everybody's had a pretty good day. Mine's hectic, but it's all good. Um, if you ever want to get your hair blown back, take a little Hebrew. It'll just spin your world upside down. I was told by the teacher last week because I've been struggling. He says it's one of the hardest languages for an English speaker to learn. That was real encouraging if you really want to think about it. But I hope everybody's had a good day. I got to have a little humor in this or I'll go crazy. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about one of the most overlooked parables in Scripture, in my opinion. It's called the parable of the persistent widow. And I think it's overlooked because it falls between some pretty good stuff here, and it just kind of thrown in there. But it has a profound message for us. Because when he told this to the disciples, he was talking about two things, or really three things, what I call it. Always pray and never give up. In effect, have bold faith. Believe. Because if we look closely, there are some other lessons that we can actually learn from this, though. See, the entire parable is found in Luke 18, 1 through 8. I'm not going to read it all at once because we're going to read parts of it all the way through this message. But what it is, it speaks of a widow who kept asking an unjust judge for justice, despite repeatedly being denied that justice. See, this judge had no respect for God. He had no respect for people. But he eventually gave in to the widow's request in order to protect himself. See, Jesus states that if the judge who was unjust eventually gave the widow what she asked for, how much more will God do for his own chosen people? That's me and you, my friends. So, what other things, what other nuggets or lessons can we learn from this little parable? The first thing I got here is some advice to ask smartly. See, in this parable, the woman kept coming to the unjust judge, but her plea was simple. Grant me justice against my adversary. That's in Luke 18:3. In her plea, she used a word that's really easy to overlook, but it makes all the difference in what she requested. So, what is that word? That word is justice. The word is justice, my friends. It's based on the word just, which means based on behaving according to what is morally right and fair. That's the Oxford Dictionary version of that. So when the widow requests justice, she wasn't asking for a favor. She wasn't asking for something that wasn't rightfully hers. In any society, there are laws that dictate what should happen in certain conditions are met. Normally, we're aware of these laws that result in negative consequences if we break them. But the question is, are we aware of the laws that will benefit us if we ask according to them? See, the persistent woman got this. She understood this. And we can learn from the widow by asking for things smartly. Now, when I say smartly, I mean with knowledge. Asking with knowledge includes knowing what is rightfully yours. But it also includes how we ask. See, if we do, it's no question of whether or not we will get what we ask for. It's more of a matter of when we will get it. See, Jesus used the example of the judge who neither feared God nor cared for what the people thought, according to Luke 18:2, to represent how we can get breakthrough in worst case scenarios by our persistence, by our bold faith. But at the end of this parable, he goes on to explain that God, unlike the judge, is just, pointing to the fact that we can definitely get the answer in reality if we know how to ask. The next step I got out of this is learn your rights. As citizens of God's kingdom and citizens of a country, there is much we're entitled to just by simply being citizens. By learning our rights, we can ask in accordance with them. Listen to 1 John 5:14 real quick. This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. See, when we learn God's will and His promises to us found in His Word, as the persistent widow did to the judge, we can confidently approach God with our request. And when you ask for something that you have the right to, and don't forget to ask in the way that Jesus asked, in His name. Listen to this in John 14:14. You may ask for anything in my name, and I will do it. Now, this doesn't mean a new car, my friends. Things that are right and just. This doesn't necessarily are wants. These are things that are right and just. Keep that perspective, please. Next one is have the right expectations. Another lesson that we learn from this parable is the widow has to have the right expectations. Even though Jesus implied that God is nothing like the unjust judge, He didn't say anyone who makes a request to God will get their response immediately. What He did say is this, and this is Luke 18:7 and 8. Will God not bring about justice for His chosen ones who cry out to Him day and night? Will He keep putting them off? I tell you, He will see that they get justice, and quickly. Now, when we see the word quickly in this parable, a different amount of time tends to come to the human mind. When you say quickly, I'm thinking in the next hour, maybe the next day or two, maybe a month if we're pushing it, depending on what it is. But this amount of time is based on our personal experiences. And it causes us to have this certain expectation of when we'll get the answer. And it often seems, because we have to wait a little while, that our expectations never fit reality. And most of the time, sadly for all of us, we get frustrated, we get disappointed, and we give up. The widow, knowing that she had the right to justice, had the right expectations on the number of times she had to approach the judge in order to get an answer. Remember, if you read this parable, she drove the dude batty. She was there every day. But her expectations weren't on a fixed number. It was whatever amount of times it took to do what was necessary. And what can we learn from this is not to set arbitrary time frames for things that we want to accomplish. If we give ourselves deadlines, it should be based on facts, not on how we feel. The next lesson I can give you here is to pray until. This is talking about prayer, my friends. And we should develop in our lives a pray until attitude. Because we don't know when God plans to fulfill the promises in our lives. We have no earthly clue on His timing. Sorry, I'm not God. I can't tell you His timing. And that's why He shared in this parable, this in verse 18:1. He said, to show them that they should always pray and not give up. He's showing the disciples that they should always pray and never give up. So there's an old thing, you've probably heard it before, it's push. Pray until something happens. Pray until something happens. Let's not let false expectations cause us to quit. We continue to persevere. We continue to pray. We continue to have faith. We continue to do all this until something happens, until God moves. This is what we have to do. The next thing we can learn is no does not always mean no. See, this third lesson that I'm teaching you here is no doesn't mean no. But in regards to the unjust judge, listen to verses 4 and 5. For some time he refused, but finally he said to himself, even though I don't fear God or care what people think, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will see that she gets justice so that she won't eventually come and attack me. Must have thought she was kind of crazy. Although the unjust judge was denying the widow's request every time she came, he eventually granted her the request because of a change of heart. Not because he was a good guy, because he had a change of heart. So like the widow, when we have to deal with people, and sorry, we're in the people business, we get a lot of no's in life. You go in and ask for a pay raise. You probably deserve it, but request denied. You go ask for a loan for a business, to start a business. They say you're not qualified. You ask for a discount on a purchase, and they say, we don't give discounts. So no is very popular in our culture. But my friends, no can mean not at this time. Not right now. Because when we get a no, we should realize that it doesn't always mean no. Behind the scenes, it might actually mean not at this time. How is this so? When people say no, it's a decision that's made based on the information available at the time. In the beginning, the unjust judge didn't consider the woman would eventually attack him or wear him out. But by her persistent request, later his realization of what could happen to him was the new information that caused him to change his mind. Likewise, a denied pay increase. Denied request for a pay increase. It might mean that the company can't afford it at this time. Or it might mean that the value, the person's value to the company isn't worth the increase. Now, both of these can change. Both these factors can change. So potentially changing the decision when requested at another time, it might work. Because you could always wait till the company's doing better. Or you could always increase your skill set and make yourself more valuable for the company, and therefore making them more willing to pay you that increase. So let the first time no to your request. Don't let that keep you from asking again. Because whenever it's no, if you truly, truly, truly want it, Be persistent like the widow. Because no does not always mean no. The next one is deal with issues as soon as possible. How many of us run into problems and want to just sweep them by the back door until we have to deal with them? I'm just as bad. In this parable, the persistent widow, here, we can learn a lesson about dealing with issues and dealing with them as soon as possible. Like the judge had power to resolve this issue day one, but he refused to. We often have the power to resolve issues at the onset, but we don't. We're all procrastinators. It happens. It was only after this judge realized the widow was a threat to his well-being, whether it be psychological or physical, that he decided to grant her justice. Before that point, he would have likely experienced frustration by her coming every day to bother him. But he didn't get frustrated, or he didn't get to that point. This is something we all go through from time to time. Life happens. Issues happen. And when they do, we tend to avoid them. We don't want to express the mental effort or the physical effort or the effort at all to deal with them now and get them out of the way. And this only causes us to have more stress because it continues to come to mind. And when we neglect it, the small thing typically becomes a bigger thing. Almost always. If we don't have a good reason to, let's not delay in dealing with the issues when they come up. I don't know how many people I talk to in ministry that they have this mountain of problems that if they had just dealt with it day one, it would have been taken care of. Just saying. See, some things require some more time. I understand that. But even then we can intentionally spend time thinking about it and working through it. Resolving that issue sooner rather than later. Otherwise, deal with the issue before it gets worse. Similar to dealing with issues as soon as possible, we should deal with them before they get worse. The more you procrastinate, the more difficult things tend to become. And it becomes more difficult to correct them. Let's look at the communication in Proverbs 15:1 here, what it says. It talks about communication. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but a grievous word stir up anger. So when we're approached by someone that's in a bad mood, let's talk about communication. Dealing with it right away, as Proverbs advises, causes us to bring the temperature down just a little bit. And sometimes we know those people that we just got to bring the temperature down. If we don't, it'll lead to arguments. It'll lead to tensions that take much more effort to resolve than if we had just had a kind word or just let them be. Sometimes you just got to let them be. There's another biblical example of advice found in this in Matthew 25. It's 5:25. It states this: settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary might hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Now, we're probably not going to prison for our arguments, but you get the point. Deal with it and handle it and move on. I worked for a principal once. His Rule 5, he only had like 7 rules. Rule 5 was deal with it, get over it. This is deal with it, get over it, my friends. The verse doesn't need a whole lot of explaining. But it's a reminder how things can escalate if we don't deal with them. Unlike the unjust judge in this parable and persistent widow, let's be a little bit smarter. And let's deal with issues now rather than later. At the end of this parable, when he returns, Jesus asks a question. Will he find faith on the earth? That question suggests that as his return gets closer, believers' faith will dwindle. Let's not be believers. Let's not be those believers anyway, by applying lessons at this parable that's often overlooked, but not ignore the lessons that it's teaching us. You guys have a blessed evening. Take care. Love you all.